Yes, in the House, it's the Speaker Pro Tem, Jason White, of District 48. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Morning, Paul. Good to be with you.
And it's good to be with you this morning on a fallish day, and I was just looking at some of the temperatures, and I think it's probably going to be, by the way, we have some fog here, too, that just moved in. And,
Yep.
looks like it's going to be the middle of October, maybe the last of October, before we start getting some real cool weather. I mean, you know.
That's what it looks like, but weren't these last 5 or 6 days pretty nice?
Oh, they're nice. One of the things I have
teaser.
to realize, if you and I think this happens a lot to people who have lived north of the central Mississippi area for years and years and maybe moved to the central part of the state or even to the below that, you're only a few miles from the Gulf Coast. I mean, you get to where we are, and they're tropical plants that will grow here south. So you can't expect to have real cold weather. But if you're thinking about you lived in Memphis or North Mississippi or northward than that, the temperature does differ quite a bit.
It differs quite a bit, and it changes quite a bit.
That's true. Even from the northeast Mississippi area around Woodall Mountain that I mentioned earlier this morning, somebody said it's not in Corinth. I know it's not in Corinth. I understand it's in Iuka, and I understand it's a mountain that I think it's about 800 feet tall. So
you probably remember some cold Delta mornings of your childhood.
Oh yeah, man! I mean, every February. I mean, it used to be snow and ice for the most part. So, all right, let's talk. I want to jump right into this as far as Andy's press conference yesterday. I don't know if you heard any of that coming in, but I think he has some valid points on this one. I want to go back and just touch base on that last cut. Because he said it's not something that the Ag Department does. Now, look at it from his point every single day. And if you don't, a lot of people don't understand what the Ag Department does or environmental protection, but these people are there and they're busy. They're not twiddling their thumbs. Agriculture Department is
we hope they're busy.
Well, we hope they're busy. And for the most part, from whatever their different departments are, agriculture means a lot to the state of Mississippi. So if you just take its importance to our state, I would think that they are quite busy.
I agree 100%. It's one of the things we do really well.
Yes. So they're not a drug enforcer, and this is asking you to be a drug enforcer. And I think where Andy is coming from, look, guys, we're in the agriculture department. We're doing corn and crops, that kind of stuff. We're doing a lot of other things here. Doing the agriculture part as far as that is almost an insult for us to be doing something to take time away from the good men and women who are farmers in the state. I see that you disagree with that.
I disagree with the premise that we're asking any of these departments to be the enforcer with regards to marijuana. We're asking, in the bill in its current form, we're asking the Department of Ag specifically to be over the cultivation and the processing, something that while, yes, they may have to hire some additional folks to do that, it is in the vein of what they do. And it's certainly not what the Department of Health does. And, as you and I both know, Department of Health's been a little bit busy with the pandemic.
Would Department of Public Safety fit there as well as far as the overall security?
Well, but Department of Safety doesn't certify crops, Paul, and the cultivation and processing of a crop.
If there is a violation, though.
Department of Public Safety is going to enforce illegal marijuana after a medical marijuana bill passes, just like they've always done.
Well,
nothing
but if there's a violation and from a grower, that would be seem to me to be better placed at DPS.
Depending on what it is. The bill addresses, if somebody gets out of line in what they're doing, so to speak. They lose their license and they're out of business.
I understand that. Would you agree that he may have some merit as far as the cost factor on this? Well, and where that's going to go? And is
we're all searching for what the cost is going to be. Initiative 65, I think, provided seed money of $2 or $2.5 million to get it started, and I think that's what you'll see in a special session. Not only will we pass a medical marijuana program bill, we'll also pass an appropriation bill that provides some money to get the program started with the different agencies.
How much do you think it's going to be?
Probably $2.5 million. That's what 65, I believe, contemplated, and certainly, we're there on an annual basis to adjust that as it needs to be.
What will that be used for when you're talking about seed money?
Well, if Commissioner Gibson needs to hire some more guys and girls to go out and do the certification process as the growers are getting licensed, see their facility where they're growing, check the processors, much as the same as he inspects other food facilities statewide. Yes, it is new. We all agree it is a new venture for any state agency to be involved in. I would also remind you, nobody is crying hard and loud about the Department of Ag being involved in this except the commissioner. And I understand he's entitled to his position on it. But I would remind him and I would remind you that back when 65 was on the ballot, he gave a passionate speech and plea for why we needed to vote against 65 and not have it. He argued against the Department of Health being involved in it because they were not accountable to the voters. He is accountable to the voters. He was elected. So he's taken his argument and he's turned it way from where he was. Here was a quote I remember him saying, "We have never in our state put anything under total and complete control of a Mississippi agency that has that authority that is unaccountable to the voters." That was his words. But today he's changed. We've gone a different route. He wanted it in statute. He wanted it where the legislature could tweak it. He wanted it where the legislature could provide laws and things to guide it and it not be in our Constitution. And hey, you know this. You and I have had this discussion on the air and off the air. I wasn't for it either. I still don't feel great about it. But I have a duty as a public servant to respect the vote that the state took. And I mean, you and I have talked about that. It's a struggle for me because I'm not there. I'm not all in on marijuana for our state.
Let me say this because it seems like, and I see you're passionate about this. I want to kind of
he hit pretty hard on the legislature yesterday,
and I see that coming out on YouTube.
He even he compared Nancy Pelosi. Let's think about all the bills Andy brought out of Judd B. with not so much as any hearing.
It sounds like it's getting personal, and to be honest with you, as just a voter and a citizen of the state,
it is personal.
That's between you guys. I'm looking at what is happening now as far as the cost of the citizens. I'm not even looking.
It's not going to cost the citizens. There are fees.
Could you
and
tell
taxes.
me? Can you tell me how much it's going to cost to operate this on a government basis? How much are the taxpayers going to be? All the people that's going to be the vehicles, the agency, the oversight, everything else. Do we have any idea what the cost is for gross before we get to net?
We have set the fees, the license fees, the registration fees, similar to other states, where those fees alone aptly funded the program. We taxed it at 7% sales tax and a 5% excise tax. 12% will fund the program, certainly over and above. Yep. We think the fees alone fund the program, but if they don't, the taxes certainly will.
Well, the good news is we're going to find out when the special session is called is how many people in the House and Senate go along with this or change their minds or they think it needs a little tweaking here and there.
And
again, as I understand, this is a draft.
I'm not presenting the draft as the gospel. I'm certainly not doing that.
I want to hear you, and I'll watch your blood pressure go up a little bit. I got a couple of more cuts. I'm glad I saved a couple of cuts. I want to see the veins pop out there. So it's coming up with the speaker. I don't want to be in charge of a 911 call here, though.
You won't have to worry about that.
That's all coming up in a moment.
The Department of Agriculture and Commerce, they have put in there to license and oversee cultivation of marijuana, processing of marijuana, transportation of marijuana, and destruction of marijuana. And I want the people of Mississippi to know we don't do any of those things at the Department of Agriculture. It's going to cost a lot of money. We don't have the staff. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the vehicles. We don't have the surveillance technology to do these things. And somebody is going to have to pay for it. Which brings me to the second question. Who's going to pay for this? Now, I was asked about 2 months ago for a potential budget on cultivation and processing. I sent people to Arkansas. I sent people to Louisiana. I sent people over this country, and I've talked to all the states around here that have a program, and we estimate for cultivation and processing the cost to be about $2.9 million. Who's going to pay for that? The way Initiative 65 was passed, the way the voters of Mississippi authorized it, the industry was supposed to pay for this. I believe the constitutional amendment had $2.5 million being fronted to get the program started. And then after that, the fees and the licensing fees, et cetera, were supposed to pay for this program, not by the people of Mississippi, but by the marijuana industry, the cannabis industry. They said it won't cost the people of Mississippi anything. It'll pay for itself. I want you to understand, the way this bill is drafted, every fee paid, every tax collected, excise tax, sales tax, licensing fees, all of it under the express language of this bill is sucked up and going to the state general fund, not to fund enforcement of this legislation.
From the heart and soul of the Magnolia State, this is Freedom of Speech, supersized on the expansive SuperTalk Network, the Gallo Radio Show, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Betty's out being bad tonight. Betty and her boyfriend, they had a big fight. She found out what everybody knew. Too many cooks.
All righty, we are back live in the Trustmark Studios with the House Speaker Pro Tem, Jason White. From the C Spire text line, thank you for getting answers. The Mike in Gulfport, the entire situation is so controversial. I had a relative who fought cancer valiantly, tried medical marijuana, and it did nothing for the pain. I'm afraid this is a ruse to lead to legal weed. And I understand the legislative part of this as far as the initiative and the 58% of the people who voted for 65. And the promise made that you guys would hold a special session on it. What's the update? Have you had any communication with the governor's office on this?
Paul, we have the speaker and the lieutenant governor had a conference call with the governor yesterday afternoon I believe they originally communicated to him on Friday that the House and Senate were very close on a bill with just minor things to be ironed out, and that we were ready for a special session on that issue should he call it, which is what he had requested of us was get a product, get something together before you come to see me. So they notified him that on Friday. Well, they circled back yesterday afternoon, and I listened in on the call. I thought they had a good conversation, the three of them. There was very little conversation about the actual bill. The governor's staff was going through the bill, is what he said. They were finishing up going through it. And I hear even Andy's cry that it's 144 pages, but what would you have us do a 10-page bill and hope it works out? I mean, everybody's trying to, and I would say a large portion of those 144 pages are just working through our criminal statutes that are already in place that deal with marijuana to make them coincide with what we're doing here with the medical side of it. But the governor's staff was going through it, finishing up going through the bill, and the speaker and lieutenant governor wanted to communicate to the governor some other things that we would like him to add to the call should he call a special session.
What were they?
It's 3 or 4 things. One of those is what we're calling a first responder plan. Federal government, the Trump administration passed something back.
No, because he was on recently, so I know that one.
And he talked about that.
He talked about that. The second thing was what?
We talked to the governor about that. We talked to him about a frontline healthcare worker retention plan.
They're taking money from some of the federal money.
Some of the ARPA money would be used
that's for nurses and
to get us through this winter and potential spike. Just basically, it would be this is a crude explanation, but those frontline workers stay where they are for the next 5 months. They would receive some sort of bonus, like a $5,000 bonus that would be paid from our ARPA funds.
I got you. And the third thing would be the Medicaid thing?
That is a thing. We offered him some compromise, if you will, on the stranglehold language. We would remove that language, but in its place, ask that the Division of Medicaid, anytime any rate increase, decrease, or change is contemplated by the division, he has to give the legislature 30 days notice, wherein the Medicaid committees in the House and Senate and the Appropriation Committee in the House and Senate can have a hearing on it, can have the Medicaid folks over to ask them about it, give him 15 days notice that they want to have that meeting and question them about it. But in no event...
Was that the first time he heard that scenario?
Yes, sir. To my knowledge, it was, and he didn't.
Okay.
He didn't recoil at that. He said, "Send us the language," and so
he said, or his people said.
The governor said.
Okay, so
he was on the phone.
He thought that would be a good idea.
Well, he said, "I want the devil's in the details. I'd like to see the language."
All right. So
and then lastly, I think you may have talked to the speaker or the lieutenant governor about this. Some funding for our domestic violence shelters and our child advocacy centers. Those are funded. About half of their funding comes from fines paid through federal prosecutions for that. And because of COVID, trials are delayed. So those fines are slow to come in right now.
That's not something that could wait till January?
It could. That's why we're not asking for a special session on it. But if we're there, we could do this. It would take 30 minutes to do it.
One more cut from yesterday's press conference.
And frankly, unless the legislature dedicates some funding through the fees to pay for this program, I don't know how it's going to be enforced. I've got our Ag Theft Director here today, Chief Dean Bernard. He's the chief of our only law enforcement division, Mississippi Agricultural Livestock Theft Bureau. We've got 8 or 9 investigators that work the whole state, chasing after stolen cows, recovering tractors, helping farmers when their grain bins get raided or when their pivots get stolen. We've got a lot to do to keep us busy, and we have limited manpower to do it. This bill will greatly expand the size of government. It'll greatly expand the size of this agency. And as a conservative, we're not supposed to be for that.
So your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are this is a new program for the state of Mississippi. And wherever it goes, I believe the Commissioner Gibson at one point advocated for a new commission to be formed. Certainly, that would be expanding state government under his definition. Mm-hmm. Instead, what we're doing is using existing agencies. Portions have gone as it relates to health and medical to the Department of Health. We've tasked DOR with regulating the dispensaries in much the same way they do the liquor and wine stores. We've tasked Department of Ag with doing the job that they typically do with their growers and processors in other areas. And I would remind you, he is going to need some new manpower for this. Nobody has said he wouldn't. And he said yesterday he was shut out of the process, but he wasn't. He was invited to meetings that he chose not to attend. He did send staff to one meeting in the Lieutenant Governor's office, and we were thankful for that. The other agencies have responded to those requests and provided estimates of what they think they need to do it. He has not at this point. If he doesn't
contract out or subcontract this, we'll contract it to somebody else. The bill says he can do that.
The bill allows him to simply contract every bit of it out.
If he decides to deny every single license, then is that a violation? What happens then?
Well, I would tell you, he's tasked with other statutory authority that is given to him in statute, and the legislature and I think the taxpayers and voters of the state expect him to carry out any other duties that he's given to do. And if he doesn't do them, he'll answer to those voters. He doesn't have a problem regulating gas pumps. We don't grow gas. We don't pull it out of the ground. He's great at regulating those things.
We actually do grow grass. Gas.
Well, you're talking about growing grass. See, it's on your mind now, Paul.
Well, we
do have some oil industry, but you know what I'm saying.
As far as ethanol is concerned, and corn.
He plays a vital role in that, and that's certainly outside the vein of agriculture, certifying gas pumps day in and day out. We'll find the manpower. Mm-hmm. We're asking him to do his part.
If he is, and I'm not putting words in his mouth, but if he's worried about the financial part of this, which as an agency head, and I would think all of them are worried about it, he's more vocal certainly than Dr. Dobbs is, or anybody from revenue is concerned. But this agency is a little bit different than this industry when we're talking about bringing this in. And again, forget about the marijuana itself. We're talking about all of the dispensaries, which are retail shops across the state, all of the stuff that comes with that, all of the...
Yeah, he wouldn't be involved in those.
Oh, I understand that. I'm just saying how the enormity of what we are about to do in the state. Growers... All of the growers, all of the stuff that takes all the rules and regulations to keep them in order. The processors, all the processors. We never had anything like this happen to us. The transportation, all of this. It is a mega industry.
I agree with you.
And
I agree with
are we going to be able to do this in a way that 10, 15, 20 years from now, for our kids and our grandkids, we look back on this, God forbid, like other states, saying, be careful, folks.
That's
watch
what we think
watch
we're
what
doing.
you're doing.
That's what we think we're doing.
All right, final segment with Jason White, who is the Speaker Pro Tem. I got a question to ask you, though. And I haven't read through this whole thing. Is security in there with minimum standards from security that they must implement? Because we're going to have some break-ins.
It has to be enclosed, locked facilities. All of that is in there as part of any growing facility or process.
And is the dispensaries, do they have some bars on the walls or whatever it happens to be?
There will be, Paul, all sorts of safeguards with regards to that.
How about the training for these? Is there any
there is requirements for training for the folks running the dispensaries who would be hired by the folks that own the dispensaries. Now, cultivators and processors, they go through a whole different set of background checks that's all set forth in the bill.
What do you think, or maybe some of the points that's going to be the sticking points are the ones that you guys are going to have to cross aisles? Do you think everything is taken care of? Everybody's on the same page on this one?
Look, everybody's on the same page generically. There are minor details. Should it be no dispensary can be within 1,500 feet of each other or 1,750 feet or 1,200 feet? There's some minor things like that. There was talk of shouldn't this be a more conservative program or bill? I would submit to you that we've tried to reflect the will of Initiative 65, but put as much of a conservative spin as we can on it from the standpoint of there is now local governments have the right to opt totally out of the business of medical marijuana in their jurisdictions in any way. They can zone it otherwise. We've put some minimum zoning requirements with regards to distance requirements and things of that nature.
Can they add to those?
No, they cannot. Oh, they could in the same way that they zone and regulate other similar situated businesses in their municipalities or counties.
If the zoning regulations you put in the bill happen to be more lenient than the ones that they have in the municipality already that's been traditionally there, they have to adhere to the bill itself as far as that particular business is concerned.
They have to at least adhere to the bill. If the locals municipality has stricter or different zoning, as long as it doesn't affect them in a way that makes the business
it doesn't say
operate.
that how many pot shops you can have.
No, but simply by the geographical distance requirement. You can't load them up on the street.
But you can have...
like in my town in West, if a 1,500-foot requirement, it's going to be first come.
Yeah, but they could extend that out to the county, though, couldn't they?
Well, yeah, they could.
So every, 1,500 feet?
Yes.
All right. So anything else you think is going to really be something that may cause a problem in this? And I think the excise tax is number one, but is that...
Look, most states tax it somewhere between 15 and 20%.
Yeah,
we're at 12, maybe 12.5%, 7% sales tax, and a 5% excise on the producers. We think that's finding a sweet spot that hopefully eliminates the black market. If you tax it too much, then it stays. You still have the black market out there selling it.
Yeah. Are the license fees commensurate with other states?
They are, except we have done something a little bit different in that we've allowed some smaller growers and processors to get in the business, and those fees are not nearly as large as what the large producers will be required to pay.
And as I understand it, there's nothing to say that the people who are duly elected men and women to the House or Senate who have business in this industry, they can go on and vote. They don't have to recuse themselves.
Paul, the bill has a provision that no member of the legislature may be involved in any form of the business.
What happens to Joel Baumgar in there?
You can have him on, and you and him can talk about that.
That is in the bill.
Yes, sir.
How long after they leave the legislature? Immediately after leaving the legislature?
That would all be answers for lawyers and.
Under what segment is that? I missed that.
I'm not sure which section it's in, but it's in there.
So it basically says a member of the House or Senate cannot have any investment in this and still...
Cannot be involved in the business.
Doesn't say anything about voting. It's just period. You can't be involved in it.
Right. That's correct.
Ooh. All right.
Well, I mean, we vote on issues all the time.
I understand that.
You know, that folks have money invested in or things like that. So voting is not really the issue there, but there is a prohibition in the bill. There
was a story here in the news that since the coronavirus kind of changed the world, the pot industry has been on a roll. A bunch of dispensaries and growing facilities opened up, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. But some of the places that have it are just getting inundated with it. And what worries me is that I know we're headlong in this one. And as I mentioned to you off the air, people say, well, you had more than 51% of the people voted for this, so it's a great thing. Well, go back and look who won the election. More than 51% of the people voted for Joe Biden. And sometimes the majority is not always right, but that's another story. Thanks for coming in, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for the time. Appreciate being here.
If you see Andy, tell him I said hello.
I'll tell him.